We're going to work towards getting this car running now. And if you recall, we took the spark plug wires off of it. They were all different lengths and some of them were way too long. So we're going to throw one of these MSD kits on there, and we have an MSD crimping tool. I like these Moroso wire separators for the MSD wire we have here. And then to positively lock them in place, we have one of these retainer jobs for the HEI type distributor. And we'll also be adding one of these clips for the ignition and the tack to the bottom of the distributor. On this distributor cap, I have the rotor rotation marked, and the number 1 cylinder is marked. That's how it's set in there now, and we'll probably just leave it that way and run with it. So I got an ignition box with extra parts and stuff, and we're looking at all these crimpers. With every set you do, they give you a crimping tool. So it appears I have 4 of them now, but they won't be needed because we got this fancy job here. We have an HEI type 90-degree end and then multi-angle boots. They give you some stickers and some other stuff. Looks like these wires are all different lengths, so we'll have to be careful when we're selecting them for the car. So we're going to put an end on here. There's a strip gauge on the stripping tool. Always seems to leave a couple hairs for whatever reason. We're using the double crimp end. We're just putting the stinger right up to where it connects on the distributor cap. There's a crimp for this in there. Really crimps it on there good. Just gonna push this down in there a little bit. Take some dielectric grease on the outside of this thing to help it slip through the boot better. Make a ring back here. This is probably the hardest part here. Wipe it off. We should be good to go. Here's how these jobbers work for labeling the wires. We're not going to use them though. Pretty easy with that tool they provide. We ran out of separators, but you get the idea. As far as the distributor cap is concerned, I think this is the only way to make spark plug wires. So we heard this rumor that Efferdent can make these overflow containers a little bit clearer than what they were. We're going to give it a shot. We've unpackaged all the tablets in this box, and we're just going to throw them all in at once. I've gathered a steaming hot bucket of water, or at least as hot as my water heater could make it. They smell awful minty. I don't ever want to have dentures though. We'll mix this up with a stir stick. We'll throw a few tablets right inside the overflow bottle too. Boy, it's really fizzing up. We'll teach this thing a lesson. I can't see shit. I hear some in the bottom still. I'm not sure how long these things fizz for. Pretty sweet Efferdent solution here. In she goes. This water's hot. It appears to be submerged. Well, it's been 2 days, and not sure how much that worked, but maybe a little bit. We'll rinse it off and see what we got. Anything in the bottom of the bucket?
Nothing. Well, if you would have seen what it looked like originally, you know, it had paint on it, tar. But the reason we want this thing really clean is because a lot of people spend all their money on an engine, tranny, rear end, and then they don't think of the radiator, the cooling system. And if this is all dingy and dark, you can't hardly see where the level is. You should keep that, up to the full line. And if it's all rusty and pukey, you should be flushing your system, because the engine doesn't cool very well if you've got scale on the metal. How's the water supposed to take the heat away? You flush your coolant system, get all that grime out, and then the water will take the heat away from those hot pockets, faster.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that stuff really did anything, but it's clean. We'll bolt her back in. For the distributor, I got a battery and tack clip. Got this from Summit for a couple bucks. It's going to replace these ends here, make for a nice clean and positive connection. This car was a points car at one point, and you can't use that wire because there's a resistor in line with it. You don't get the proper voltage.
So what happens is a lot of guys drop in a HEI ignition and they're not getting total performance, because they used to have points. This is back in the old days. And the way it worked is you had a ballast resistor on the firewall, and when you cranked your car, it would get a full 12 volts to hot spark to start it, but then they found out the points couldn't handle 12 volts all the time, and it would be burning up the points. So when you let off and it just went to run, it was going through the ballast resistor and you only got 9 volts. Well, then you drop in an HEI ignition that needs 12 volts, running on 9. Guys would try to gap their plugs, for a bigger gap, and it was just too hard on you. Wear parts out. So if you ever switch over to HEI, you got to make sure you got 12 volts going to any high energy ignition that's capacitive discharge or whatever, and you're eliminating points. 12 volts. So I ended up telling you about that Jeep story, and I'm riding around. It actually acted like it was pretty strong because it had a V8 in a little Jeep. But the first time it got cold out, it didn't want to start. And I'm checking for spark. I'm looking. I got a spark plug out, and I'm cranking. I'm getting spark, but it's like yellow. It's not blue. So I take a voltage tester, and I'm checking right at the distributor, and I'm only getting 4 volts. So I bypass this ballast resistor that's on the firewall, and it goes up to like 6 volts, okay? And I'm like, that's still no good. Then I look on the side of the super coil, that was Excel super coil, there's a ballast resistor on there too. And then it was like, it goes up to like 8 volts or something. And then I traced the wire from the switch going down the steering column. There was another resistor. So then by the time I got all them resistors out, I got up to 12 volts, and she'd start really good and freezing cold, and everything was fixed.
I got the carb off for now. We're going to freshen her up with a carb rebuild kit. If I remember right, it was leaking a little bit, so we'll get her sealed up again. You can see some crap made it past that Summit fuel line with the built-in fuel filter I had. I had to put a spring behind that sintered bronze filter. So that's kind of suspecting some crap might have got into here, but we'll clean it all up anyway. And I already have a video on how to rebuild one of these things, so I'm not going to make another one. But if there's any highlights, I'll throw them in. Here's the primary metering block in this carb. I fitted this carb with a secondary metering block so I could have screw-in jets. It had a metering plate, and then you can tune that, but you got to change out the whole plate. When I assemble these things, I spray them down with this silicone, and you can see all these gaskets came apart with absolutely zero scrapage. If it was leaking, it was probably leaking out of these paper bowl screw gaskets. Well, she's back on and running. You can tell there ain't that big of a cam in this car, but the combo works out pretty good. Well, she runs. We think there's a pinhole leak in the front of that upper hose. We're going to trim her back a little bit. It's leaking some tranny fluid. So we got some touch-up stuff to do here before it's drivable. I can say one thing for sure. Starting it up and letting it warm up really activated the mouse piss smell. Thought it was gone, but must be up on the engine and the exhaust. When I get a chance, I'll get her up on the lift and try and get her roadworthy so I can take it out on the flyaway and air it out. We'll work on that, and then we're going to start in on this rear bumper and try to get that dressed up. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.